If your God exists, ask him to stand you up right now.
The voice of Dr. Arthur Sterling echoed through the cold, sterilized corridor of the free pediatric wing at St. Clair Hospital. He looked down, adjusting the gold cufflinks of his impeccable lab coat, at a 10-year-old boy sitting in a rusted wheelchair. The boy, named Lucas, wore a donated t-shirt that was too big for his rickety frame, his thin legs hanging inertly. "You shouldn't speak like that, doctor," Lucas said with a soft but firm voice that sounded too old for a child. "God doesn't perform magic tricks for applause." Arthur let out a dry, humorless laugh. "No, he doesn't. Do you know why? Because in this hospital, I am God. I decide who walks and who doesn't. I cut, I stitch, I save. And my x-rays say you will never leave that chair. So stop giving false hope to the other patients with those whispered prayers of yours." The doctor turned around, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the linoleum floor, leaving the boy behind. Before we continue with this story that will shake you to your core, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment "I believe" if you know the final word does not belong to man. Dr. Arthur Sterling wasn't just a neurosurgeon, he was a legend. At 50 years old, his bank account had more zeros than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. He lived in a triplex penthouse overlooking the ocean, drove imported cars, and traveled first class. His life was defined by control. In the operating room, his hand never trembled. He removed tumors other doctors considered inoperable. He fixed shattered spines. He was science personified, cold, precise, infallible. But when the private elevator reached his penthouse and the doors opened, the god of neurosurgery became a broken man. He would walk through the silent apartment, ignoring the expensive artwork on the walls, and enter the room at the end of the hall. There, surrounded by machines costing millions, lay Cecily, his 15-year-old daughter. 2 years ago, a horse-riding accident had left her in a persistent vegetative state. Cecily's brain, the part that made her who she was, according to all scans, dark. Arthur had spent fortunes. He brought in specialists from Switzerland, tested forbidden experimental therapies, and bought the most advanced ventilators. Every night, he sat in the leather armchair beside her bed, holding his daughter's inert hand, staring at the monitors. "Come on, Cecily," he would whisper, the hospital arrogance replaced by raw desperation. "I am the best. I save strangers every day. Why can't I save you?" Money bought the best life support, but it didn't buy life. Science explained why she wouldn't wake up, but it brought no comfort. Arthur's wound was open, bleeding daily, transforming his pain into cynicism and cruelty toward anyone who dared speak of miracles. The next morning, the hospital was in an uproar. Now, Dr. Reynolds, the administrative director and Arthur's old college rival, called an emergency meeting. Reynolds was a short man with an oily smile and boundless ambition. He had always envied Arthur's talent, but knew how to manipulate his ego. "Arthur, we have a budget problem," Reynolds said, sliding spreadsheets across the glass table. "The Hope Wing, where we handle pro bono cases. It's draining resources. We need to close it and transfer the patients to the public system." Arthur flipped through the papers with indifference. "Do whatever is necessary. I'm not an accountant." "Excellent. We'll start the transfers today. Oh, including that boy, Lucas. He's been causing trouble," Reynolds added. "The nurses say he keeps blessing the other patients. It's unhygienic and anti-scientific." Arthur nodded. "I'll handle him personally." Arthur went down to the charity wing. The smell there was different, the scent of cheap disinfectant and crowded humanity. He found Lucas in the hallway, talking to an elderly lady who was weeping softly because her husband was about to have his foot amputated. The boy held the woman's hand. "Don't cry, Mrs. Miller. God is holding the surgeon's hand. It's going to be okay." The woman seemed to calm down, wiping her tears. Arthur felt a wave of irrational irritation. How dared that boy, who had nothing, promise comfort? "Lucas," Arthur called out, his voice cutting. The woman stepped away, respectful and frightened. Lucas turned his wheelchair. "Good morning, Dr. Sterling. You are being transferred today to a government shelter." Lucas's large brown eyes showed no fear, only a compassion that irritated Arthur even more. "I know. I saw that you were going to say that. You didn't see anything. Stop with these lies." "Doctor," Lucas said, ignoring the insult. "The pretty girl who sleeps in your house, she hears when you cry." Arthur froze. The blood drained from his face. No one at the hospital knew Cecily was at home. He kept his personal life a strictly guarded secret to protect his image of invincibility. "What did you say?" Arthur hissed, gripping the arms of the wheelchair. "Who told you about her? Dr. Reynolds? Some nurse?" "No one told me. I saw it in my dream. She is in a white room with flashing green lights. She wants to come back, doctor, but you need to release the anchor." "What anchor? What are you talking about, you insolent brat?" "The anchor of your pain. You think you are the master of life and death. As long as you don't ask for help, she can't come back." Arthur let go of the chair as if it had burned his hands. "This is sick. You are a dirty little manipulator. Reynolds was right. You leave here now." He called security. "Get him out of here. Put him in the transfer van, immediately." As Lucas was taken away, he didn't scream. He just looked at Arthur and said, "When the ground shakes, doctor, remember to look up." 2 hours later, the sky darkened. A violent, sudden summer storm crashed down on the city. Lightning sliced the sky, and thunder made the hospital windows vibrate. Arthur was in complex surgery when his personal emergency pager, the one connected only to his home monitors, began to beep frantically. He dropped the scalpel. "Doctor?" the assistant asked. "Take over. I need to leave. Now." Arthur ran. He drove his Mercedes through the torrential rain, running red lights, his heart beating in his throat. When he reached the apartment, he found Cecily's private nurse, Martha, in a panic. "Dr. Sterling, the monitors, intracranial pressure spiked out of nowhere. She's seizing." Arthur ran to the room. Cecily was shaking in bed, the alarms screaming that sharp cadence every dot. He checked her pupils, dilated, unresponsive. "Adrenaline, prepare for emergency intubation." He shouted orders, his hands working on autopilot. But nothing worked. Oxygen saturation was dropping. 80, 70, 60. He administered drugs, performed maneuvers. He used all his knowledge, his 30 years of study, his awards, his genius. And the line on the monitor began to go flat. Science failed. Money failed. The god of neurosurgery was watching his only daughter die in his arms. "No, no, no! Cecily, stay with me!" he screamed, his voice cracking. Martha was crying in the corner. "Doctor, she's gone!" Arthur fell to his knees beside the bed. The silence of the room, broken only by the continuous tone of the heart monitor indicating cardiac arrest, was deafening. "As long as you don't ask for help, she can't come back." Lucas's voice exploded in Arthur's mind. "Ask him to stand you up." Arthur looked at his watch. The transfer van. With the storm, traffic would be gridlocked. They couldn't have reached the shelter yet. "Keep up manual ventilation. Don't stop," Arthur shouted to Martha. "I'll be back. I swear I'll be back." Arthur ran out of the building without an umbrella. The storm was biblical. He took the car and drove back to the hospital, praying the van was still there. Upon arriving, he saw the transport van parked in the service yard, the driver smoking a cigarette under the awning, waiting for the rain to let up. Arthur ran to the van and yanked the back door open violently. Inside, in the dark, huddled against the cold, was Lucas. "Lucas!" Arthur shouted, soaked, his $1,000 suit ruined, hair plastered to his forehead, looking like a madman. The boy opened his eyes. "Doctor? She's dying. My daughter. She is dying right now. You said you knew. Help me. For the love of God, help me." It was the first time in decades that Arthur pronounced "for the love of God," not as an empty expression, but as a real plea. Lucas looked at the doctor's trembling hands. "You want me to go there?" "Yes, I'll take you. I have the best equipment, but nothing is working." "Equipment won't help, doctor," Lucas said calmly. "You challenged me in the hallway this morning. Remember?" Arthur swallowed hard. "Yes, I was a fool. You said, if your God exists, ask him to stand you up." Lucas pushed aside the dirty blanket covering his atrophied legs. "I can't heal your daughter, doctor. I am just a boy. But the one who lives in me can. But he needs you to open the door." "What door? I'll do anything. I'll give all my money." "It's not money. It's pride. You need to kneel, not to me, but to recognize that you are not God." Arthur looked around. The van driver was watching. Nurses were passing in the distance. The rain punished the asphalt. He was Dr. Sterling, but he was also Cecily's father. Slowly, painfully, Arthur bent his knees. He knelt in the puddle of dirty water and oil in the hospital parking lot. He lowered his head, defeated. Arthur sobbed, the rain mixing with his tears. "I can't save her. I am a failure. Please, if there is someone up there, save my girl. I surrender." Lucas smiled, not a smile of victory, but of love. "Now, doctor." Then, It happened. Lucas placed his hands on the arms of the wheelchair. His thin arms shook. He closed his eyes and whispered something inaudible. Dr. Reynolds appeared at the door under the awning, attracted by the commotion. "Arthur, what are you doing on the ground with that beggar? Get up! You're embarrassing the hospital!" Arthur didn't move. He was looking at Lucas. The boy exerted force. His legs, which according to Arthur's exams had severe muscular atrophy and spinal damage, began to firm up. A crack was heard, then another. Lucas propelled his body forward. His bare feet touched the wet asphalt, and he stood up. The van driver dropped his cigarette. Reynolds stood open-mouthed. Lucas took a step, shaky, like a newborn, but firm. Then another. He walked to Arthur, who was still kneeling, and placed his small hand on the doctor's wet head. "Get up, doctor," Lucas said. "Let's go get Cecily." The trip to the apartment was silent, except for Arthur's labored breathing. Lucas rode in the passenger seat, watching the city through the window, his legs, previously useless, now planted firmly on the floor of the car. They ran upstairs. When they entered the room, the sound of the monitor was still that continuous, desperate whistle of no signal. Martha was performing chest compressions mechanically, crying, exhausted. "Stop, Martha," said Arthur. "Doctor, if we stop, she—" "Let him through." Arthur made way for Lucas. The boy, walking with difficulty but without help, approached the bed. Cecily looked like a wax doll, pale and cold. Lucas didn't make a long prayer. He simply held Cecily's hand and said, "Cecily, your father has released the anchor. You can come back now." There was a second of absolute silence. The thunder outside ceased. Suddenly the monitor gave a beep. Martha gasped. Another beep. Sinus rhythm. The heart returned. 40 BPM, 60 BPM, 80 BPM. Cecily's eyelids fluttered. Arthur held his breath, his chest aching with hope. The girl opened her eyes, not the vague, glassy stare of the last 2 years. Present eyes, focused. She looked to the side, saw Arthur, and whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse, "Daddy, you're all wet." Arthur collapsed onto the bed, hugging his daughter, weeping like a child. The god of neurosurgery died in that room, and a grateful father was born. The next day, the news spread like wildfire. There was no hiding it. Martha had witnessed it. The van driver had witnessed Lucas walking. Dr. Reynolds tried to contain the damage, calling a press conference to claim it was all mass hysteria and that Lucas must have had a misdiagnosis from the start. But Arthur walked into the conference room. He wasn't wearing his impeccable lab coat. He was in a simple shirt, without a tie. He brought Lucas with him walking. And he brought Cecily in a wheelchair, but awake and smiling. In front of the cameras, Arthur took the microphone. "For years, I said that science was the only truth. Yesterday, science said my daughter was dead. And this boy, whom Dr. Reynolds and I tried to throw onto the street, proved there is a greater truth." He looked at Reynolds. "Starting today, St. Clair Hospital will not close the Hope Wing. On the contrary, I am selling my penthouse, my cars, and my shares in private clinics. All that money will be reinvested to transform the Free Wing into the best neurosurgery center in the country. And Dr. Reynolds is fired for administrative negligence and inhumanity." Reynolds left under the boos of journalists and staff. Arthur crouched down in front of Lucas. "You have nowhere to go, Lucas, and I have an empty room at home, now that Cecily wants company. What do you think?" Lucas smiled, that wise smile. "I think God arranged everything perfectly. Doctor." The sun streamed through the wide windows of the new Lucas Sterling Institute of Neurological Rehabilitation. The hospital was a world reference, not just for technology, but for humane treatment. No one was turned away for lack of money. A 22-year-old young man, tall and strong, walked through the corridors wearing a white coat with the name Dr. Lucas Sterling, resident. He stopped beside a gurney where a boy was crying in fear of surgery. "Hey, champ," Lucas said, crouching down with no difficulty in his legs. "Are you scared?" "I am. The doctor said it's going to hurt." Lucas held the boy's hand. "The pain passes, but let me tell you a secret. There is someone holding your hand who is stronger than any pain." At the end of the hall, a white-haired gentleman, walking slowly with a look of absolute peace, watched the scene. Arthur smiled. Beside him, Cecily, now a law graduate, held his arm. "He's just like you, Dad." "No," Arthur replied, eyes misty. "He is much better than I ever was. He heals the soul before touching the body." Arthur looked at his own hands, now wrinkled. He didn't operate anymore. but he had never felt so useful. He had learned that the true miracle wasn't just rising from a wheelchair or waking from a coma. The true miracle was a heart of stone that, touched by grace, started beating again. And you? What miracle do you need today? Remember the story of Dr. Sterling and Lucas. Sometimes to reach the sky, first you need to bend your knees.